Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome back to another episode of Cat Tales, a Warrior Cats reread podcast. My name's Coffee, I'm your host, and today we are finishing up Rising Storm, the fourth book in the first arc of the Warrior series. We just have 3 chapters in this last episode here, so it's going to be kind of a quick one, but boy do we have a lot going on in this one. There's a lot going on. It's a very interesting ending to the book, is all I'll say. Alright, where we last left off, a forest fire ripped through ThunderClan territory, so ThunderClan had to stay in RiverClan's camp for a night or two. Unfortunately, Patchpelt, one of the elders, passed away trying to escape the fire, and then Fireheart and Greystripe went back to find Yellowfang and Halftail. Halftail was dead, and Fireheart found Yellowfang just before she died, and they exchanged very kind words with each other. But unfortunately, she passed away as well from the smoke inhalation. So, we left off where Yellowfang passed away. Chapter 28, quote, "With a tender lick, Fireheart closed the medicine cat's eyes for the last time. Then he lowered his head onto her shoulder and felt the warmth fade from her body. He didn't know how long he lay there, listening to his heart beating alone in the shadowy cavern. He thought for a moment he caught the familiar scent of Spotted Leaf drifting into the den on the rain-chilled breeze. Had she come to guide Yellowfang to StarClan? Fireheart let the soothing thought flow through him and felt sleep swell like clouds at the edges of his mind. She will be safe with us. Spotted Leaf's gentle mew ruffled his ear fur, and Fireheart lifted his head and looked around. Fireheart? Greystripe called from the entrance. Fireheart struggled to sit up. I've buried Halftail, the Grey Warrior meowed. Yellowfang's dead, Fireheart whispered. His hollow mew echoed off the stone walls. She was alive when I found her, but she died. Did she say anything? Fireheart closed his eyes. He would never share Yellowfang's tragic secret with any cat, not even his oldest friend. Just that she was thankful Bluestar let her live in ThunderClan. Greystripe padded into the cave and bent his head to lick the old medicine cat's cheek. When I left, I never thought I wouldn't speak to her again, he murmured, his voice thick with sorrow. Shall we bury her? No, Fireheart meowed firmly, his mind suddenly clear. Spotted Leaf's words echoed in his mind. She'll be safe with us. She was a warrior as well as a medicine cat. She will have her vigil, and we can bury her at dawn. But we must get back to the RiverClan camp and tell the others what has happened, Greystripe reminded him. Then I'll come back tonight and sit vigil with her, Fireheart replied. The two friends trekked back through the devastated forest in silence. The gray afternoon light was fading by the time they padded into the RiverClan camp. Groups of cats lay at the edge of the clearing, sharing tongues after their evening meal. The ThunderClan cats crouched in an isolated huddle at one side. As soon as Fireheart and Greystripe appeared, Cinderpelt struggled to her paws and limped toward them. Bluestar rose too from where she lay beside Whitestorm. She brushed past Cinderpelt and reached the returning warriors first, her eyes filled with desperate hope. Did you find Yellowfang and Halftail? That's the most energy we've seen from her in days. Fireheart saw Cinderpelt hanging back, her ears pricked, as desperate for news as her clan leader. They're both dead, he told them. Fresh pain filled his heart when he saw Cinderpelt sway on her paws. The little cat backed away unsteadily, her eyes clouded. Fireheart wanted to go to her, but Bluestar stood in his way. The ThunderClan leader's blue eyes showed no pain. Instead, they grew hard and cold, and a shiver ran down Fireheart's spine. Spotted Leaf told me that fire would save the clan, she hissed. But it has destroyed us. No, Fireheart began, but he could not find the words to comfort his leader. His gaze followed Cinderpelt as she stumbled back to the others. To Fireheart's relief, Sandstorm hurried forward to meet her, pressing her flank against Cinderpelt to support the medicine cat's thin gray body. He looked back at Bluestar, his heart sinking under stony expression. ThunderClan will return home tonight, she decided in a voice like ice. But the woods are empty. The camp is ruined, protested Greystripe. It doesn't matter. We are strangers here. We should be back on our own territory, spat Bluestar. Then I'll escort you, Greystripe offered. Fireheart glanced at his friend and suddenly understood the longing in his eyes. Greystripe wanted to go home. The realization flooded Fireheart's mind like a shooting star, illuminating the night sky. Fireheart looked expectantly at Bluestar. Surely she could see Greystripe's desire to return to ThunderClan. Why would we need an escort? Demanded Bluestar, her eyes narrowing. Well, perhaps I could help you rebuild the camp, Greystripe suggested uncertainly. Maybe stay for a while, he faltered as Bluestar's eyes flashed angrily. Are you trying to say that you want to come back to ThunderClan? She spat. Well, you can't. Fireheart stared at her in stunned silence. You chose to be loyal to your kits rather than your clan, the leader snarled. Now you must live with your decision. Honestly, she's right. He can't keep going back and forth like this. I know she's been on one recently, but she's right. Greystripe flinched. Fireheart gazed at the old leader in disbelief as she turned and called to her clan. Get ready to leave. We are returning home. The ThunderClan cats leaped to their paws at once, but Fireheart felt nothing but disappointment and anger as he watched Bluestar gather her clan around her. He notices Bluestar staring at her kits, Stonefur and Mistyfoot, with sorrow. He realizes she reacted harshly towards Graystripe because she's still angry with herself for leaving her kits, and she doesn't want Graystripe to make the same mistake. Fireheart reassures Graystripe that she has her reasons for saying those things to him, but she's still suffering, and maybe after she's better, he can come home. Fireheart hurries after Bluestar, who is thanking Crooked Star and letting him know that ThunderClan is in their debt. Fireheart catches Leopardfur narrowing her eyes with interest. He knows she'll definitely try to get something out of this. As they leave the RiverClan camp, Fireheart glances back at Graystripe, seeing his friend's eyes filled with pain. Quote, Fireheart sighed inwardly as Small Ear hesitated again at the edge of the river. It was swollen from the rain, but Darkstripe and Whitestorm had already crossed and were waiting in the shallows at the other side. Dustpelt swam beside Fernpaw as the apprentice struggled to keep her little gray head above water. Sandstorm had crossed with Cinderpelt. The pale orange warrior had not left the Medicine Cat's side since Fireheart had returned with the news about Yellowfang. Kinda loving the friendship of his two girlfriends. Joke, by the way. Hurry up, ordered Bluestar, snapping impatiently at Small Ear. The Grey Tom glanced over her shoulder in surprise at her harsh tone, and then hurled himself into the dark water. Fireheart tensed his muscles, ready to spring to the rescue, but there was no need. Longtail and Mousefur appeared on either side of the frantically splashing elder, buoying him up with their strong shoulders. Bluestar leaped into the river and swam easily to the other side, all frailty gone from her body as if fire had purged the weakness from her and burned her strong again. Fireheart slipped into the water after her. The clouds above the trees were beginning to thin, and he felt a chill through his wet fur from the fresher wind as he waded from the river. He padded over to Cinderpelt, leaning down to lick her head. Sandstorm glanced at him, her eyes reflecting his sorrow, while the rest of the clan paused on the shore and stared in silent horror at the forest. Even in the faint moonlight, the devastation was obvious. The trees stripped bare, the musty fragrances of the leaves and ferns replaced by the bitter stench of burned wood and scorched earth. Bluestar seemed blind to it all. She strode past the other cats without pausing and headed up the slope towards Sunning Rocks and the trail home. Her clan could do nothing but follow. It's like being somewhere else, whispered Sandstorm. Fireheart nodded in agreement. Cloudpaw. Fireheart slipped through the cats ahead of him and fell in step beside his apprentice. Thank you for staying in the RiverClan camp as I asked. No problem, Cloudpaw shrugged. How are the elders? They're gonna take a while to get over Halftail's and Patchpelt's deaths. Cloudpaw's voice was subdued. But I managed to get them to eat some fresh kill while you were away. They need to keep their strength up, however much they are grieving. Well done. That was the right thing to do, Fireheart told him, proud of his apprentice's unexpectedly wise compassion. The ravine lay like an open wound in the landscape. Sandstorm stopped and peered over the edge, and Fireheart could see her trembling. He was shivering too, even though his fur had already dried from the river crossing. The clan filed slowly down the steep slope and followed Bluestar into the camp. Inside the clearing, the cats gazed silently around the stripped, blackened space that had once been their home. Take me to Yellowfang's body, Bluestar meowed sharply at Fireheart, cracking the silence. Fireheart's fur bristled. This wasn't the weak shell of a leader he had struggled to protect in recent moons, but nor was it the wise and gentle leader who had welcomed him to the clan and been his mentor. He began to pad toward Yellowfang's clearing, and Bluestar followed. Fireheart glanced over his shoulder and saw Cinderpelt limping behind the ThunderClan leader. She's in her den, he meowed, standing at the entrance. Bluestar slipped into the shadows inside the rock. Cinderpelt sat down and waited. Aren't you going in? Fireheart asked. I'll grieve later, Cinderpelt told him. I think Bluestar needs us now. Surprised at the composure in Cinderpelt's voice, Fireheart looked into her eyes. They were unnaturally bright with sadness, but seemed calm as she blinked gently at him. He returned the gesture, grateful for her strength of spirit in the middle of such endless tragedy. A chilling wail echoed from Yellowfang's den. Bluestar staggered out, twisting her head wildly and glaring around at the blackened trees. How could StarClan do this? Have they no pity? She spat. I will never go to the Moonstone again. From now on, my dreams are my own. StarClan has declared war on my clan, and I shall never forgive them. Fireheart stared at his leader, frozen with horror. He noticed Cinderpelt creep quietly to Yellowfang's den and wondered if she'd gone to grieve for her old friend, but she reappeared a moment later, holding something in her jaws, which she dropped beside Bluestar. Eat these, Bluestar, she urged. They will ease your pain. Is she injured? Asked Fireheart. Cinderpelt turned to look at him and lowered her voice. In a way, but her injuries cannot be seen. She blinked. These poppy seeds will calm her and give her mind time to heal. She turned back to Bluestar and whispered again. Eat them, please. Bluestar bent her head and obediently licked up the small black seeds. Come, Cinderpelt meowed gently and led the ThunderClan leader away. Fireheart felt his paws tremble as he watched Cinderpelt's quiet skill. Yellowfang would be so proud of her apprentice. He padded into the den and grasped Yellowfang's crumpled, smoke-stained body by its scruff. He heaved it into the moonlit clearing and arranged it so that Yellowfang rested with the same dignity with which she had lived. When he had finished, he bent down to give his old friend one final lick. You shall sleep beneath the stars for the last time tonight, he whispered, and settled down beside her to sit in vigil as he had promised. Not Cinderpelt giving Bluestar perks. Cinderpelt joined him as the 3/4 moon began to slide away and the horizon glowed cream and pink above the blackened treetops. Fireheart stood and stretched his tired legs. He gazed around the devastated clearing. Don't grieve too much for the forest, murmured the gray cat beside him. It will grow back quickly, stronger because of the injuries it has suffered, like a broken bone that heals twice as well. Fireheart let her words soothe him. He dipped his head gratefully to her and went to find the rest of the clan. Mousefur was sitting on guard outside Bluestar's den. Cinderpelt ordered it, Whitestorm explained, patting out of the shadows. The warrior's pelt was still stained with smoke, and his eyes were red-rimmed from the fire and exhaustion. She said Bluestar was sick and needed to be watched over. Good, Fireheart meowed. How were the rest of the clan? Most of them slept a little once they'd found places dry enough to lie down. We should send out a dawn patrol, Fireheart thought out loud. Tigerclaw might take advantage of what has happened. Who will you send? Asked Whitestorm. Darkstripe seems the fittest of the warriors, but will need his strength to start rebuilding the camp. Even as he spoke, Fireheart knew he wasn't telling the whole truth. He wanted to keep the Dark Tabby warrior where he could see him. I'd like you to stay here as well, if that's okay. Whitestorm dipped his head in agreement as Fireheart continued. We need to tell the other cats what's happening. Bluestar is sleeping. Do you think we should disturb her? A worried frown crossed Whitestorm's face as he spoke. Fireheart shook his head. No, we'll let her rest. I'll speak to the clan. He bounded onto the high rock in a single leap and called the familiar summons. Below him, the clan cats padded drowsily from the wreckage of their dens, their tails and ears flicking in surprise when they saw Fireheart waiting where their leader usually stood to address them. We must rebuild the camp, he began once they had settled in front of him. I know it looks a mess now, but it is the height of Greenleaf. The forest will grow back quickly, stronger because of the injuries it has suffered. He blinked as he repeated Cinderpelt's words. Why isn't Bluestar telling us this? Fireheart stiffened as Darkstripe challenged him from the back of the group. Bluestar is exhausted, Fireheart told him. Cinderpelt has given her poppy seeds so that she can rest and recover. Anxious murmurs rippled through the cats below. The more she rests, the quicker she'll recover, Fireheart reassured them. Just like the forest. The forest is empty, fretted Brindleface. The prey has run away or died in the fire. What will we eat? She glanced anxiously at Ashpaw and Fernpaw, her face shadowed with a mother's concern even though her kits had left the nursery. The prey will come back, Fireheart assured her. We must hunt as usual, and if we need to go a little farther to find fresh kill, then we will. Murmurs of agreement rose from the clearing, and Fireheart began to feel a surge of confidence. Longtail, Mousefur, Thornpaw, and Dustpelt. You'll take the dawn patrol. The 4 cats looked up at Fireheart and nodded, unquestioning. Swiftpaw, you can replace Mousefur on guard duty and make sure Bluestar is not disturbed. The rest of us will start work on the camp. Whitestorm will organize parties to gather materials. Darkstripe, you can supervise the rebuilding of the camp wall. And how am I supposed to do that? Demanded Darkstripe. The ferns are all burned away. Use whatever you can, answered Fireheart. But make sure it is strong. We mustn't forget Tigerclaw's threat. We need to stay alert. All kits shall remain in camp. Apprentices will travel only with warriors. Fireheart gazed down on the silent clan. Are we agreed? Loud mews rose from the crowd. We are, they called. Right, Fireheart meowed. Let's start work. The cats began to move away from the high walk. The high walk? The high rock, weaving among one another swiftly to gather around Whitestorm and Darkstripe for their instructions. Fireheart jumped down from the high rock and patted to Sandstorm. We need to organize a burial party for Yellowfang. You didn't mention her death, Sandstorm pointed out, her green eyes puzzled. Or Halftails. Fireheart glanced down as Cloudpaw's mew sounded beside him. The young apprentice sounded reproachful. The clan knows they are dead, Fireheart told them, feeling his fur prickle uncomfortably. It is for Bluestar to honor them with the proper words. She can do it when she's better. And what if she doesn't recover? Ventured Sandstorm. She will, Fireheart snapped. Sandstorm winced visibly, and he cursed himself. She was only voicing the fears of all the clan. If Bluestar had really turned her back on the rituals of StarClan, Yellowfang and Halftail would never hear the proper words to send them on their journey to Silverpelt. Fireheart felt his confidence slide away. What if the forest didn't recover before a leaf bear? What if they couldn't find enough fresh kill to feed the clan? What if Tigerclaw attacked? If Bluestar doesn't get better, I don't know what will happen, he murmured. Fire flashed in Sandstorm's eyes. Bluestar made you her deputy. She'd expect you to know what to do. Okay, but he shouldn't be expected to lead the entire clan? Like, hello? Her words hit Fireheart like stinging hail. Put your claws away, Sandstorm, he spat. Can't you see that I'm doing the best I can? Instead of criticizing me, go and organize the apprentices to bury Yellowfang. He glared at Cloudpaw. You can go too, and try to keep out of trouble for once, he added. He turned away from the pair of startled-looking cats and marched across the clearing. He knew he had been unfair, but they had asked a question he wasn't ready to answer, a question so frightening that he couldn't begin to think what it might mean. What if Bluestar never recovered? That's the end of chapter 28. I don't know. I think he was valid for crashing out a little bit. He just watched his grandma die, and now they're, like, getting on his ass for, like, not really knowing what to do, as if he didn't become a deputy, like, 6 months into being a warrior or something. Bluestar's, like, not doing shit. She's just mentally unwell. So he's figuring it out as he goes along. And they're not giving him grace for it. Like, come on, guys. I bet if either of them had to be thrown into deputyship on a random Tuesday, they wouldn't be doing well either. But Fireheart's not even doing bad. He's doing really well. Moving on to chapter 29. It stays overcast for the next few days. Repairs for the camp are going as well as they can. The dens have been reinforced with miscellaneous materials, but the fern tunnel will just have to grow back. Bluestar has only left her den to check on camp repairs at Whitestorm's request. Fireheart is still pretty much running the camp. He is not excited about the gathering tonight and realizes that Bluestar might not even know it's tonight, so he vows to ask her about it later. Quote, Fireheart heard a scratching behind the nursery. Through the patchy walls, he saw familiar pelts of white fur. Cloudpaw, he called. The apprentice emerged from behind the bramble bush, his jaws crammed with twigs that he'd been weaving through the nursery walls. Fireheart blinked in welcome. He hadn't been the only cat to notice how hard Cloudpaw worked these past few days to fix the camp. There had been no more questions about the white apprentice's commitment to the clan. Fireheart wondered if it had taken something as severe as a fire for Cloudpaw to discover the true meaning of loyalty. The young cat stood in front of him now without speaking, his fur flattened and blotchy with soot and mud, his eyes strained and exhausted. Go and rest, Fireheart ordered gently. You've earned it. Cloudpaw dropped his bundle of twigs. Let me finish these first. You can finish them later. But I've only got a few left to do, Cloudpaw argued. You look dead on your paws, Fireheart insisted. Go on. Yes, Fireheart. He turned to leave and glanced forlornly at the fallen oak where Small-Ear sat with Dappletail in one eye. The Elder's den seems so empty, he mewed. Patchpelt and Halftail are with StarClan now, Fireheart reminded him. They'll be watching you tonight from Silverpelt. A wave of regret tugged at his belly as he remembered that Bluestar had refused to conduct the proper ceremony for her dead clanmates. Did she not even speak for Yellowfang? I mean, I get that, she's lost her faith in StarClan, which, okay, but you can still at least say some nice words about Yellowfang? At the minimum? I will not place them in the paws of StarClan, she had told him bitterly. Our warrior ancestors do not deserve the company of ThunderClan cats. And so Whitestorm had soothed the anxious clan by speaking the words that would send Yellowfang and Halftail safely to their old friends in Silverpelt, just as he had done for Patchpelt at the RiverClan camp. Oh, wow, well, at least some cat did the ceremony. Cloudpaw nodded, but he looked unconvinced. Fireheart knew that the apprentice still found it hard to believe that the lights of Silverpelt were the spirits of their warrior ancestors, watching over their old hunting grounds. Go and rest, he repeated. The young cat dragged his paws toward the charred stump where the apprentices gathered to eat and share tongues. Brightpaw hurried across the clearing to greet her friend, and Cloudpaw met her with a friendly nuzzle. But the white apprentice's eyelids were already drooping, and his greeting was interrupted by a huge yawn. He lay down where he was, resting his head on the ground and closing his sore eyes. Brightpaw crouched at his side and gently began to wash Cloudpaw's grubby pelt. Watching them, Fireheart felt a pang of loneliness as he remembered the same companionship he had once shared with Greystripe. He turned his paws once more toward Bluestar's den. Longtail was sitting outside, and he nodded as Fireheart passed. Fireheart paused at the entrance. The lichen had been burned away, and the stone was black with soot. He mewed a quiet greeting and stepped inside. Without the lichen, the wind as well as daylight flooded in, and Bluestar had dragged her bedding into the shadows at the back of the drafty cave. Cinderpelt sat beside the huddled shape of the leader, pushing a pile of herbs toward her. They'll make you feel better, she urged. I feel fine, snapped Bluestar, keeping her eyes fixed on the sandy floor. I'll leave them here, then. Perhaps you'll manage them later. Cinderpelt stood and walked unevenly toward the den entrance. How is she? Fireheart whispered. Stubborn, replied Cinderpelt, brushing past him out of the den. Fireheart cautiously approached the old leader. Bluestar was even more of a stranger to him now, locked in a world of fear and suspicion directed not just against Tigerclaw, but at all their warrior ancestors in StarClan. Bluestar, he began tentatively, dipping his head. The gathering is tonight. Have you decided who will go? The gathering? Bluestar spat with disgust. You decide who to take. I won't be going. There is no longer any reason for me to honor StarClan. As she spoke, a cloud of ash blew through the open doorway, cutting off her words with a bout of coughing. Fireheart stared in dismay as spasms racked her frail body. Bluestar was the leader of the clan. It was she who taught him about StarClan and the way the warrior spirits watched over the forest. Fireheart couldn't believe she would reject the belief she had based her whole life upon. This happens a lot with religion. Realizing that the quote-unquote gods or some unknowable spirit doesn't control everything can be a huge ego death moment. You don't have to honor StarClan, he stammered at last. Just be there to represent your own clan. They need your strength now. Bluestar looked at him for a long moment. My kids needed me once, but I gave them to another clan to raise, she whispered. And why? Because StarClan told me I had a different destiny. Is this it? To be attacked by traitors? To watch my clan die around me? StarClan was wrong. It was not worth it. Fireheart felt his blood turn to ice. He turned and padded blindly out of the den. Sandstorm had replaced Longtail outside. Fireheart looked hopefully at the pale orange warrior, but she clearly hadn't forgiven his harsh words, because she fixed her eyes on her paws and let him pass without speaking. Girl, she started it! Feeling unsettled, Fireheart spotted Whitestorm trotting back into camp with the Sun High Patrol. He signaled to the white warrior with his tail, and Whitestorm headed toward him while the rest of the patrol split up in search of food and place to rest. Bluestar isn't well enough to attend the gathering, Fireheart meowed when Whitestorm reached him. The elderly warrior shook his head as if the news came as no surprise. There was a time when nothing would have kept Bluestar from a gathering, he observed quietly. We should take a party anyway, Fireheart told him. The other clans must be warned about Tigerclaw. His group of rogues is a threat to all the clans. Whitestorm nodded. We could tell them Bluestar is ill, I suppose, he suggested. But we might be inviting trouble if we let it be known that our leader is weak. It would be worse not to go at all, Fireheart pointed out. The other clans will know about the fire. We must appear to be as strong as we can. WindClan is clearly still hostile, Whitestorm agreed. The fact that Sandstorm, Cloudpaw, and I fought them and won in their own territory won't have helped, Fireheart admitted. And there's RiverClan to consider. Whitestorm curiously looked at him. But they gave us shelter after the fire. I know, Fireheart replied. But I can't help wondering if Leopard Fur might demand something in return. We have nothing to give. We have sunning rocks, Fireheart answered. RiverClan made no secret of their interest in that part of the forest, and right now we need every bit of our territory for hunting. At least ShadowClan is weakened by sickness, meowed Whitestorm. That's one clan that won't be attacking us for a while. Yes, agreed Fireheart, feeling guilty that they should be helped by another clan suffering. Actually, the news about Tigerclaw might work in our favor. Whitestorm stared at him, puzzled, and Fireheart went on. If I can persuade the other clans that he's a threat to them as well as us, they might put all their energy into protecting their own borders. Whitestorm nodded slowly. It might be our best hope of keeping them away from our territory while we recover our strength. You're right, Fireheart. We must go to the gathering, even if Bluestar is unable to come with us. His blue gaze met Fireheart's, and he knew that they were thinking the same thing. Bluestar was able to go if she wanted, but she chose not to. Really not good that the leader of the clan won't be showing up after this fire. So later that evening, the clan eats their very measly meals. Fireheart had told them to not hunt too much to let the forest replenish itself. He feels the eyes of the clan on him as he leaps onto the high rock to announce who is coming to the gathering. Quote, Bluestar will not be coming to this gathering, he announced. Mews of alarm ripped through the cats, and Fireheart saw Whitestorm weaving among them, calming and reassuring them. How much had the clan guessed about their leader's state of mind? In the RiverClan camp, they had united to protect Bluestar from prying eyes. But here in their own camp, her weakness left them vulnerable and afraid. Tigerclaw's tabby kit sat outside the nursery, staring up at the high rock with round, curious eyes. For a moment, Fireheart let himself be mesmerized by its yellow gaze, and images of Tigerclaw began to prowl around the edges of his mind. Does that mean ThunderClan won't attend? He was roused by Darkstripe's voice as the striped warrior shouldered his way to the front. After all, what is a clan without a leader? Was Fireheart imagining the ominous glint in Darkstripe's eye? What is bro planning? ThunderClan will go to Four Trees tonight, he meowed, addressing the whole clan. We must show the other clans that we are strong, despite the fire. He saw nods of agreement. The apprentices shuffled their paws and looked eagerly at one another, too young to understand the seriousness of attending a gathering without a leader, and distracted by the hope that they might be chosen to go themselves. We mustn't betray any weakness, for Bluestar's sake and for the sake of the whole clan, Fireheart went on. Remember, we are ThunderClan. He yowled the final words, surprised by the fiery conviction that welled up from his heart, and the clan responded by straightening their backs, licking at their ash-covered fur, and smoothing their singed whiskers. I shall take Darkstripe, Mousefur, Sandstorm, Whitestorm, Ashpaw, and Cloudpaw. Will the others be enough to protect the camp? Darkstripe demanded. Tigerclaw will know there is a gathering, added Longtail. What if he uses the opportunity to attack? We can't afford to leave more cats behind than usual. If we appear weak at the gathering, we risk inviting attack from all the clans, Fireheart insisted. He's right, agreed Mousefur. We can't let the others see our weakness. RiverClan already knows the fire destroyed our camp, added Willowpelt. We must show them we are as strong as ever. Then we are agreed, asked Fireheart. Longtail, Dustpelt, Frostfur, Brindleface, and Brackenfur will guard the camp. Elders, queens, you will be safe with them, and we shall return as soon as we can. He listened to the murmurs and searched the eyes looking up at him. With a wave of relief, he saw heads begin to nod. Good, he meowed, and leaped down from the rock. The warriors and apprentices he had chosen to come with him were already circling at the camp entrance, impatiently flicking their tails. A familiar long-furred white pelt was among them. This would be Cloudpaw's first gathering. Fireheart had been looking forward to this moment since the kid had first come to the clan. He still remembered his own first gathering, racing down the slope to Four Trees surrounded by mighty warriors, and he couldn't help feeling a stab of disappointment as he looked around at the smoke-stained and hungry cats Cloudpaw would have to follow. And yet Fireheart could feel their excitement and pent-up energy as strong as ever. Sandstorm was kneading the ground with her forepaws, and Mousefur's eyes shone brightly in the growing darkness as Fireheart hurried across to them. Longtail, he meowed, pausing briefly beside the brown warrior. You will be senior warrior here. Guard the clan well. Longtail dipped his head to Fireheart. They'll be safe, I promise. Fireheart's glow of satisfaction at Longtail's respectful gesture was soured by the mocking glance Darkstripe threw him from the camp entrance. It was as if the warrior could see through his outer confidence to the uncertainty that lay beneath. Fireheart caught Sandstorm's eye as he passed her. She was staring at him intently. Bluestar made you her deputy. She'd expect you to know what to do. Her challenging words, which had stung like an adder's bite before, suddenly strengthened him, and he flashed Darkstripe a look of defiance as he led the way out of the camp. Well, it seems Longtail has turned over a new leaf, which is very good. The cats charged silently through the forest, the burned trees reaching into the darkening sky like twisted claws. Fireheart felt his paws sink into the ash, damp and sticky, but there was a hopeful scent in the air of fresh green shoots sprouting from the cinders. He glanced backward. Cloudpaw was keeping up well, and Sandstorm was pushing ahead, drawing closer until she ran at his side, matching his pace. You spoke well on the high rock, she meowed, panting. Thanks, answered Fireheart. He pulled away as they scrambled up a steep mound, but Sandstorm caught up as they reached the top. I'm sorry about what I said about Bluestar, she meowed quietly. I was just worried. The camp is looking great, considering I'm deputy, Fireheart suggested sourly. Considering it was so badly damaged, Sandstorm finished. Fireheart's ears twitched. Bluestar must be proud of you, she went on, and Fireheart winced. He doubted if Bluestar had even noticed, but he was grateful for Sandstorm's words. Thanks, he meowed again. He turned his head as they ran down the other side of the mound and looked into the warrior's soft emerald eyes. I missed you, Sandstorm, he began. He was interrupted by the sound of powerful paws drumming behind them, and the voice of Darkstripe growled, So what are you going to tell the other clans, then? Before Fireheart could answer, a fallen tree loomed ahead. He sprang into the air, but a branch caught his paw and he landed clumsily, stumbling. The other cats raced past him, but they slowed instinctively as Fireheart fell behind. Are you okay? Darkstripe asked as Fireheart caught up to him. The striped warrior's eyes glinted in the moonlight. Yes, fine, Fireheart answered curtly, trying not to betray the pain in his paw. It was still throbbing when the cats reached the top of the slope that led down to 4 trees. Fireheart halted to catch his breath and gather his thoughts before they joined the other clans. The valley below had been untouched by the fire, and the 4 oaks towered unscathed into the starry sky. Fireheart glanced at the cats that waited beside him, tails twitching and ears pricked expectantly. They obviously trusted him to take Bluestar's place at the gathering, and convince the other clans that ThunderClan had not been weakened by their recent tragedy. He had to prove himself worthy of that trust. He flicked his tail, signaling to them as he had seen Bluestar signal so many times before, and plunged down toward the great rock. That's the end of Chapter 29. Chapter 30, the last chapter of the book. WindClan and RiverClan have already arrived at the gathering, but there's no sign of ShadowClan. Fireheart wonders if the sickness is so bad that they can't even attend. Fireheart itches to get up on the great rock and warn the other cats about Tigerclaw. Quote, Fireheart! One Whisker bounded up to Fireheart's side. He felt a flicker of surprise at One Whisker's friendly purr. The last time he had seen a WindClan cat, it had been Mudclaw screeching angrily away into the heather. But One Whisker clearly hadn't forgotten how Fireheart had brought his clan back from exile. The 2 warriors had grown close on that journey, and both cats still valued the bond they had forged. Hi, One Whisker, Fireheart greeted the brown tabby. You better not let Mudclaw see you talking to me, truce or no truce. We didn't part on very good terms last time we met. Mudclaw takes pride in defending his territory, replied One Whisker, shifting uncomfortably from paw to paw. He'd obviously heard about the 2 attacks on ThunderClan cats in WindClan territory. Maybe, Fireheart admitted, but that's no excuse for turning Bluestar away from Highstones. He found himself wishing Bluestar had been able to share with StarClan at the Moonstone that day. Things might be very different now if she had received some assurance that her warrior ancestors had not turned against her. Tallstar wasn't happy when he heard about that. Even if you were sheltering Broken-Tail, it was no excuse. Broken-Tail was dead by then, Fireheart interrupted him, regretting his tone when he saw One Whisker's ears flicking uncomfortably. I'm sorry, One Whisker, he meowed more gently. It's good to see you again. How are you? Fine, answered One Whisker, looking relieved. I'm sorry to hear about the fire. I know how bad it is for a clan to be driven from its home. His eyes met Fireheart's sympathetically. We've returned to our camp and we've rebuilt it the best we can. It won't be long before the forest recovers. Fireheart tried to sound confident. I'm glad to hear it, One Whisker meowed. You know, it's as if we've never been away from our camp now. There have been plenty of kits to this Greenleaf, and Morningflower's kid is here as an apprentice. It's his first gathering. Fireheart remembered the tiny wet bundle of fur he had helped to carry through the rain, out of Two-Leg territory and back to WindClan's home. He followed One Whisker's gaze across the clearing to a young brown Tom. Although small like the rest of his clan, the apprentice's muscles were already lean and well-developed beneath his short, thick fur. Fireheart noticed One Whisker suddenly dip his head. He turned to see Tallstar approaching them. The WindClan leader looked at Fireheart with narrowed eyes. We've been seeing a lot of you lately, Fireheart, he remarked. Just because you once let us home doesn't give you the freedom to wander around our territory. So I've been warned, replied Fireheart. He forced himself to stay calm, keeping his resentment at Bluestar's treatment out of his voice. After all, the gathering was held under a truce, and this was a warrior he had learned to respect on their journey together through Two-Leg territory. But Fireheart held the black and white leader's gaze and meowed firmly. However, I must put the needs of my clan first. Tallstar's eyes glittered back at him, then he gave a tiny nod. spoken like a true warrior. Having traveled with you, I wasn't surprised when Bluestar made you her deputy. The WindClan leader glanced around the clearing and added, There are those who thought such a young cat would never carry off such a great responsibility. I was not among them. Fireheart was taken aback. He hadn't expected such a compliment from the leader of WindClan. He stifled a delighted purr and nodded his thanks. Where's Bluestar? Asked Tallstar. I can't see her among your cats. His voice was casual, but his eyes betrayed a keen interest. She's not feeling well enough to travel yet, Fireheart answered lightly. Was she injured in the fire? Nothing she won't recover from, Fireheart meowed, hoping with all his heart that he was telling the truth. Beside him, One Whisker looked up sharply. Fireheart followed his gaze to the slope on the other side of the valley. 3 ShadowClan cats were charging into the clearing, Running Nose at the head. Fireheart felt a glimmer of relief as he recognized one of the 2 warriors behind the gray and white medicine cat. It was Little Cloud, clearly recovered from the sickness, thanks to Cinderpelt. The other clan cats backed away from the ShadowClan warriors as they skidded to a halt in front of the great rock. News of their disease had obviously spread through the forest. It's all right, Running Nose meowed, panting as if he could read their minds. ShadowClan is free of the sickness. I have been sent ahead to tell you to wait before you begin the meeting. ShadowClan's leader is on his way. What makes Nightstar so late? Called Tallstar from Fireheart's side. Nightstar is dead, answered Running Nose bluntly. Oh. A stunned ripple spread through the other cats like a breeze through trees, and Fireheart blinked. How could the ShadowClan leader be dead? He had only recently received his 9 lives. What a terrible sickness. No wonder Little Cloud and Whitethroat had been so afraid to return to their camp. Is Cinderfur coming instead? Whitestorm called, referring to the ShadowClan deputy. Running Nose looked at his paws. Cinderfur was one of the first to die of the sickness. Then who is your new leader? Demanded Crooked Star, emerging from the shadows on the other side of the great rock. Running Nose glanced at the RiverClan leader. You'll see for yourself soon enough, he promised. He'll be here shortly. Excuse me, Fireheart murmured to Tallstar and One Whisker. There is something I must share with Running Nose. Fireheart padded to where the ShadowClan medicine cat stood, surrounded by warriors and apprentices, all anxious to discover who ShadowClan's new leader was. He wondered how the old cat would react to hearing about Yellowfang's death. Running Nose had seen so much death lately that perhaps it wouldn't mean much to him anymore, but Fireheart felt he should break it to him privately, before he made an announcement from the Great Rock. After all, Yellowfang had trained Running Nose when she had been ShadowClan's medicine cat. The bond between the 2 cats must have been very close, if only for the short time before Broken Tail drove Yellowfang out of her clan. Fireheart signaled with his tail to the ShadowClan medicine cat. Running Nose looked relieved to be leaving the circle of inquiring faces as he followed Fireheart to a quieter spot beneath one of the oaks. What is it? He asked. Yellowfang's dead, Fireheart meowed gently, feeling a fresh thorn of sorrow drive itself into his heart. Running Nose's eyes clouded with grief. The gray and white Tom bowed his head as Fireheart went on. She died trying to save a clanmate from the fire. StarClan will honor her bravery. Running Nose didn't reply, just swung his head slowly from side to side. Fireheart felt his own throat tighten with sadness, but he couldn't afford to let grief overwhelm him here. He touched the Tom's head with his nose and patted quickly away. The rest of the cats were beginning to weave anxiously around one another, their mews growing louder. We can't wait any longer, Fireheart heard a RiverClan warrior mutter to his neighbor. The moon will be setting soon. If this new leader is going to be late, that's his problem, Mousefur agreed. Fireheart knew the real reason for her keenness to get on with the meeting and return to camp. With Tigerclaw loose in the forest, none of the clans were safe. He saw a flash of white fur at the center of the clearing as Tallstar leaped onto the great rock. He had obviously decided to start the meeting without ShadowClan's leader. Crooked Star started toward the rock. Fireheart braced himself, ready for his first gathering at the head of his clan, and desperate to warn the other cats about the threat that lurked in the woods. Good luck. Fireheart felt Sandstorm's breath ruffle his ear fur. He turned and gently touched her warm cheek with his muzzle, knowing that their quarrel had been forgotten. Then he threaded his way through the other cats toward the great rock. He was stopped in his tracks by a yowl called from the slope behind him. He's here! Fireheart turned and saw Darkstripe craning his neck beside him, but their view was blocked by the other cats peering and rearing up on their hind legs to get a look at ShadowClan's new leader as he passed through the crowd. Darkstripe's ears suddenly pricked with surprise. The striped warrior was staring up at the great rock, his eyes glittering with barely suppressed excitement. Fireheart twisted his head to see what had prompted such a strong reaction from his clanmate. Framed by the cold light of the moon, Fireheart saw the powerful shoulders and broad head of the cat who had leaped onto the rock beside Tallstar. The other leader seemed puny and frail beside this massive figure. And with a cold shiver of dread, Fireheart realized that the new leader of ShadowClan was Tigerclaw. Boom! That's the end of the book. I'm not even kidding, that's the last sentence of the book. Talk about a cliffhanger. Imagine being alive in... Well, I was alive when this was released, but I had not started reading the books yet. Imagine reading these as they were coming out in 2004, and you had this cliffhanger, and you just had to wait. Not us. Yeah, that's the end of the book. We'll see what happens next. Sorry this episode came out late. It's been a very, very busy week. I've been working, and then my boyfriend just moved into my house, so I've been helping him move his stuff. And I've been exhausted, so apologies that this is coming out late. I don't know if it's Saturday or Friday night or Sunday. So apologies for that. Should be getting back to normal schedule next week. But if I have to delay it, I'll post on socials about it. If you like this podcast, rate me 5 stars on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and subscribe to the YouTube channel if that's where you listen. Yeah, thank you guys so much for being here through this journey with me. We only got 2 books left in the first arc. I hope y'all are excited, because these books got a lot going on in them. Alright, thank you so much for listening. Have a great weekend, and may StarClan light your path.